There are a couple of options here. One option is supervised visitation, which will never, ever work with Kanye West. Can you imagine somebody sitting down in Kanye's house saying, Kanye, don't do that? Welcome to the Two Angry Men podcast. Harvey Levin here.
Mark Geragos here. Actually, we're going to expand it from two angry men to three old white guys today. How's that?
Because Dr. Phil is with us. Phil, we are so happy you're here. Thank you.
Yes.
Well, thank you guys for having me. Very proud.
Well, you are the perfect person to talk about this. We have been spending a lot of time at TMZ over Kim Kardashian's dilemma on how to deal with the father of four of her kids, their kids, who is just uncontrollable. I mean, everybody knows that he is now hardcore anti-Semitic. He embraces Hitler, but also he is now, talking about Kim as a sex trafficker. He is talking about the man always makes the decision. He is taking their daughter, their 11-year-old daughter, North, to a studio to interact with Diddy and the Tate brothers. And he is not stopping. It's getting worse and worse. So I've talked to people who are kind of in that world who are saying, what does Kim do at this point? We're told she's afraid if she goes to court, it's going to set him off even more to try and strip him of legal or physical custody. They have joint custody now. If she does nothing, it's going to create a problem. She wants the kids to have a relationship with the father. So the reason I wanted to talk about this today is that what I've been looking at is this, that if Kim does nothing, she could get in trouble if he puts the kids at risk. So what the hell does she do?
Well, you're describing a very difficult, but sadly not an unusual situation where one spouse or another goes down toxic highway. And look, obviously, the best situation for any child is to have a relationship with both parents if those parents are healthy. Clearly, if a mother has children and is divorced from the father, then clearly you want the father to be in the child's life if that father is healthy and mentally and emotionally stable and is has a good influence on the child. But that's not always the case. If the father, for example, is a criminal or is into drugs or some kind of self-destructive behavior. And, there are kind of 10 universal things. They're not specific to the state of California, but they're almost black letter law. Number 6 is the ability to identify and prioritize a child's needs ahead of your own. I mean, isn't that just fundamental for parents, that you put a child's needs ahead of your own? And when you're out there running your own agenda, and maybe because a person's a drug addict or they have some interest that they're just obsessed with that's at the child's expense, then you're violating that. And if the other parent sees that and knows that and doesn't do that, doesn't intervene and do something about it, well, that falls under the definition of negligence, because one of the tenets that the courts look to determine if a parent is being negligent is if they fail to keep that child out of harm's way. And that can mean physical, mental, emotional, exposure to other people that could be a bad influence or whatever. And if they get into the court system and the court appoints an ad litem, for example, that looks only at the child's best interest, they're going to look and see whether the parents are meeting the standards that they're held to. And the family court looks at that really hard, and that would be a problem.
For a problem, not just for Kanye, for Kim.
It could be a problem for Kanye in terms of they would look at several things. They would look at whether or not Kanye, they would look at whether or not Kanye was providing a safe, stable, and secure environment. They would look at whether he was identifying and prioritizing the child's needs, showing an ability to empathize with and meet the child's needs, whether or not there was an ability to regulate impulses and emotions on the parent's part, whether there was the ability to assist the child in developing and maintaining appropriate relationships, and did the parent exercise appropriate judgment regarding the child's welfare.
Okay.
All
okay.
of those things would come up, but that would be a problem.
Well,
You
here's
know, but Harvey, I think your point is you're saying if Kim doesn't do something,
right.
and I don't disagree with that in theoretically, because we've got a couple of cases where we're defending mothers who didn't do something and have actually, it's escalated to a criminal kind of prosecution. And Phil, as always over the years, is spot on when he says, unfortunately, this is a situation that is often told. I mean, all you have to do, it's heartbreaking actually, to watch some of these proceedings where a judge has to try to balance the two narratives here. I mean, on one hand, you've got Kim, who has got 4 children here, and she loves them to death, and she doesn't want anything, and she doesn't want them exposed. You've got Kanye, who obviously is madly in love with his kids as well, but has got his own challenges. So some judge is going to, at some point, they've tried to keep it out of the public eye, but some judge at some point is going to make the hard call.
Well, here's the thing, though. I mean, they have a structure where if there's a disagreement, they go to mediation for a minimum of 3 hours. That happened when Kanye took North, their eldest daughter, to a recording studio, recorded a song with Diddy. The Tate brothers show up. Kim sensed danger and told the bodyguards, get her out of there. And was really worried for her danger, not for her safety, and not just at the recording studio, but when she goes back to school and the kids hear about it and everything else. So they go to mediation because Kim doesn't want the song released, and that's on a Friday. They're in mediation. Kanye agrees, I won't release the song. On Sunday, he releases the song. So mediation isn't working. He doesn't listen. She knows it could create danger, but she doesn't know what to do. So what I'm thinking, and this is not a hypothetical, this happens all the time in California with celebrities. People call the Department of Children and Family Services and they say, check on this family. This kid's at risk. DCFS has a duty to go out. And if they go out and say to Kim, we agree with you, there's a danger here. What have you done? And she can't answer, then she's in trouble. Am I wrong here?
Well, look, I can give you 2 examples that jump out at me immediately. I mean, Michael Jackson, that is exactly what happened 20 years ago. And somebody had called DCFS. They came out. They had to do kind of with Prince and the other 2, and Paris and Blanket. They had to do an investigation. I've had that happen with another person who I probably will keep them and have them remain nameless. You can even just, unfortunately, in this day and age, anonymously report, and they will come out, they'll initiate an investigation. So yes, that is true. I think the thing I would like to hear Phil's take on is, what do you do when you have somebody like Kanye, who is a creative genius and obviously at times kind of wobbles between that and the litany of horrors that
he has a mental
Harvey has
illness,
detailed.
Mark. I mean, we should just lay it out. I mean, it's public. He's talked about it. He has a mental illness, and a serious one.
Yeah, and she's trying to, by the way, the song that you mentioned and the situation, I've got so many conflicts here. At one time, we've represented the Tates. I've ongoing, over the years, represented Diddy, and I understand Kim's predicament, if you will. And I think, as you've detailed it, she wanted to try and keep it from becoming public, and unfortunately, it hasn't. And so what do you do with that, Phil, when you've got somebody like this who, at least as of right now, it doesn't appear that you're going to be able to institute any kind of fencing or guardrails around it.
Well, let me put it this way. I'm always slow to invite the government into a situation. Frankly, when you decide that you're going to go to court and invite the government into your family, that is fraught with danger because, listen, these judges are not King Solomon. They don't have all the wisdom in the world, and you have no idea what he or she may do, and they can put a real burden on the family. But it begins and ends with this, Mark and Harvey. As a parent, you have an undivided loyalty to your children. It'll make a damn what else is going on. You have an undivided loyalty to your children. It doesn't matter whether they're celebrities or you work at a factory or whatever. You owe a fiduciary duty to those children, and you've got to take whatever measures are necessary to protect their physical, mental, emotional well-being. And if you can negotiate that, if you can do that, and you can predict that it's going to stick, then obviously that's great. And if you cannot, if they make agreements and don't keep them, if they violate the agreements, then you must immediately and with intention seek whatever methods available under the law to compel the other side to comply and do what's necessary. And if you need an emergency intervention, then you get that emergency intervention. What we do not want is for these children to wind up in foster care because that system is broken. And what will happen with these kids, and you think, well, with this kind of money, they're not going to wind up in foster care. That's wrong. If DCF gets involved and thinks one parent is not reacting and the other parent is unstable, they will take them. Now, they're likely to put them with a family member rather than strangers, but you don't want these children hung out to dry.
But that's really shocking. I mean, the idea that Kim Kardashian, who loves these kids, who's dealing with a mentally ill ex-husband who is off the rails, could actually lose custody by doing nothing, even though she loves them. That's breathtaking.
That is absolutely a possibility. And this isn't even a close call that she could lose custody of these children. I've not met Kanye. I've certainly not evaluated him. I cannot render an opinion on what his pathology is or is not. But the behavior that is observable is troubling. And I can tell you, having worked as an ad litem and having worked as a court-appointed expert in these matters in the past, just what is available to be seen from a distance would be cause for a court to take notice and intervene and say, okay, what's the mother doing here? And if the answer is nothing, there's no motion before the court, there's no petition to protect the children. At that point, I mean, Mark, would the court not appoint an ad litem to protect the children and immediately start taking measures?
In this case, everything I know, I don't think that there's any chance that anybody's going to do anything because Kim has been so proactive. She's tried to do, you can just tell, she's tried to do everything humanly possible, discreetly and in a conciliatory way, and then kind of I mean, if anybody, whoever's advising her, I think is giving her great advice in this sense. She has not escalated it publicly. She's tried to adhere to the agreements. She's tried to do everything possible to keep this or resolve this in such a way that she doesn't damage the relationship. So I applaud her.
Well, I do too. But if I'm not mistaken, what Phil is saying is she may not be doing everything possible. That if Kanye is posing a risk, which she herself has said he does by exposing her to certain people, that if she herself believes that he poses a risk, but doesn't seek to yank custody away from him or do something she's on the hook because she hasn't done everything.
Right. Like I said, I've seen nothing that leads me to believe. In fact, I've seen the contrary. I think she's gone above and beyond. Because remember, this is the father of 4 of her kids, and she's also got the kids are at a crucial age, especially the oldest. And she is doing. It's kind of ironic because she's such a public figure and she's just so omnipresent. But at the same time, she's tried to keep this thing from spilling over, if you will. And I think, by all accounts, at least from the outside looking in, a Herculean effort to try to do the right thing here. I mean, I can't imagine anybody second guessing what she's doing here. But I guess you are.
Well, no, let me say this. I don't know Kim well, but I do know her, and she and I have had some conversations just one-on-one, but they've been thoughtful conversations, and I don't see her the way her image is in the world as just kind of a kind of pop icon type. I found her to be very intelligent and very thoughtful, and the things that I perceive in her is that she is a very serious parent and really a pretty serious individual. I think she's misperceived and has made a career
I
out of
agree.
that.
I don't, like I said, I would agree with you wholeheartedly, Phil. I think she's incredibly impressive, both as a human and businesswoman. I mean, soon to be lawyer. And she's got a drive. She's got a kind of a serious yet insightful and self-deprecating humor. I mean, she's the real deal.
I mean, look,
she gets kind of, there's a caricature of Kim Kardashian in some quarters, not everywhere, but in some quarters that I don't think does her justice at all. She's one of the most impressive humans I've ever met.
We all agree with that. I mean, we all agree.
Okay,
everything you said. But what does she
point.
do? She's got a huge problem. His name is Kanye West. She's got to do something with it.
Here's the rest of my point. I think what she's tried to do so far, and I would have advised her in this way, is she's tried to manage this in a peaceful way to not agitate the father in this situation, because he has the means and maybe the temperament to just up and disappear with these kids. Who knows? I mean, I've seen it happen and followed the situation for years where kids disappear with a parent to a foreign country, and it's all kinds of hell to unravel it. I think she's tried to say, look, I don't want to agitate the situation. I'm not speaking for her. I'm just speculating that she's tried to let's not get too aggressive here and cause this to go off the rails any more than possible. But I think there's a point at which you say, this isn't working. And I think the court could hold a parent to the standard of saying, you tried that and it didn't work. If you can't get them to do what they need to do, then it's time to compel them to do what they need to do. And she doesn't want to do that, but there's a point at which, if they won't do it voluntarily, you need to compel them to do it involuntarily. And she may be at that point.
There are a couple of options here. One option is supervised visitation, which will never, ever work with Kanye West. Can you imagine somebody sitting down in Kanye's house saying, Kanye, don't do that? I mean, how do you think that's going to go over? So, I mean, it's something that is done. It can't be done here. He does not have the temperament for that. So the only other options I can think of is either limiting or taking away physical and or joint custody. And it seems to me, Phil, we're kind of dancing around it, that, nothing else has worked. It seems like we're there. It seems like we're at that point.
Well, that's what I'm saying is, my fear for her is that someone will be appointed to evaluate the situation and say, it's time to compel his compliance with the guidelines that I set forth, putting the child's interest ahead of your own, maintaining a stable environment, being careful who they're exposed to. And if he's not doing that, then he will forfeit his access to the children. And Harvey, there are parenting centers where he can have so many hours a week, any parent. And I don't know Kanye, I've never met the man. So I cannot render a professional opinion about that. But I can tell you that there are situations where they have to go to a center where there are police officers there, and they see their children in a controlled environment where they can't say no. And if they do resist or try to go off of whatever the conditions are, then they're removed from the situation. And as I say, I don't know Kanye. I can't comment on what his pathologies may or may not be, but there are supervisory circumstances where not complying isn't an option. And then the next step is there's no visitation at all. If you can't do it with supervision, then you can't do it at all. And I've seen that happen many times. And then finally, they lose visitation, and then they can ultimately have their parental rights terminated. It just keeps stepping up, however far a parent wants to push it.
So I'm really, both you guys, I've always wondered about this, and we've talked about this in our office here. You have a parent who is racist, anti-Semitic, and just awful, in the way he talks about other human beings, loving Hitler. What do you do with that if you're the other parent? Is there any recourse? Should there be any recourse? Because there are probably a lot of racists, lots of anti-Semites out there who raise their kids. So what do you do in a situation like that where the parents are divorced and one person is just super toxic?
Well, of course, that's always a subjective call as to what's super toxic. To me, I spent a couple hours yesterday in a very agitated confrontation with an anti-Semitic pro-Hamas agitator in this country that I think is just awful. But there are people that I will get so much hate mail over that. So, I mean, it's subjective. Some people would think I'm the problem, not her. So it's in the eye of the beholder. But when you are doing things that are not subjective, they are objective, where you're putting a child in harm's way by people that have criminal backgrounds, or they're doing drugs, they're doing illegal things, or you're driving fast or under the influence. And I'm not saying any of these things are taking place, but there are things that are objectively defined that you can point to limit that parent's access to the children.
By the way, this is a perfect example of why for over 40 years I've assiduously avoided family law, because
exactly
it is what a disastrous, and just there's rarely a good solution in these cases, or rarely, and you just, people always say to me when doing criminal law, how do you handle criminal law? How do you deal with that? And I said, the only place anybody ever gets shot outside of a courthouse, if you ever look, is always outside of a family law courtroom. It is the tensions and people at their worst.
Yes, and domestic violence are the most dangerous calls that police officers respond to.
Yeah.
And Mark, another big problem is there is a terrible communication link between family court and the criminal court. They don't communicate well. So family law judges seldom know, or too often don't know what's happening with one or other parent on the criminal side of the docket. They just don't get that information.
That is so true. We have cases right now where you have to try to tell one judge or the other, wait a second, we've got a judge of what we say of concurrent jurisdiction over in criminal law. He's making this order. There's a family judge who's making another order. The orders may conflict. How do you advise somebody on what to do there? And they always say, well, this is criminal court, I take precedence, and this is family court, I've got a different objective. And it becomes this kind of no man's land in between, or a 30-mile zone in between, DMZ in between, as to what you're supposed to do, because a lot of times the orders they aren't consistent, and they don't layer over each other.
Yeah, terrible.
I had a talk yesterday with a judge who spent 20 years in family law, and she is hard boiled to say the least. And she said to me, she said, "What happened with Kanye, what you're seeing today, did not happen overnight, and Kim must have known something a long time ago." And it was almost like she was saying, Kim kind of went into this knowing there was trouble. Um, and she never kind of closed the loop on it, saying, "Are you saying this is Kim's fault?" But that was certainly the intimation that if you're going to have kids with somebody who's off, that there's some assignment of blame. I don't believe that, but this judge seemed to think so. And what do you think?
Well, that's a dangerous situation. I
Right.
mean, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I was going to say with Phil, that is always your worry, that somebody is going to kind of default to that thinking. They shouldn't. I mean, if Phil has indicated that he's talked with Kim, I don't know how well he knows her. Harvey, I don't know if you do. I consider myself at least somebody who has talked with her, and that how can it just is such a bridge too far to say to somebody, well, you've had 4 kids, it's now your fault because you've had the kids. If the kids are healthy and you're doing your best to raise them, I mean, I don't see any kind of a pathway, the productive pathway, to say, well, why did you do it? Why did you procreate with this particular individual? Who knows what went on, how this unfolded?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I was just interested that she's had a lot of these cases, and I think her tolerance level is limited.
Well, I'll be very clear. I don't know Kim well. I've had brief conversations with her and walked away impressed that she was different than the image that's portrayed in the media. And I will say that people can be very different with their mate behind closed doors than they are with their brand or their persona. They can have a real bad boy image out in the world, and behind closed doors, they can be completely different. So I don't think you can judge someone on their private relationship with somebody. And also, if you get someone like, for example, I've dealt with people that are bipolar, and they can be just absolutely out of control, doing insane behaviors. And then you can be around them when they cycle out, and they can be the nicest people you ever met in your life. So, and then there's always this savior thing where you think, okay, I'm the one that can fix them. So you just don't know what's going through somebody's mind or how somebody's presenting behind closed doors. So, but what we do know is, I come back to what I said is, as a parent, parent is both a noun and a verb. It's something you are, but it is something you do. And what you do is you show undivided loyalty to your children. They come before everything else. And if you can't get someone to do what they need to do voluntarily, then you have to compel it. That's all it comes down to, that. And parents are held to that standard at some point, and that will happen in this case sooner or later. And I just hope it's before something bad or worse happens. I mean, clearly some things have happened already, but you just hope that it's not something terribly, terribly tragic before somebody intervenes to compel compliance.
The final thing, let's say that Kim ends up going to court and saying, look, he is a danger to these kids. It's not in the best interest of the kids for him to have either legal or physical custody. And Kanye talks to the judge and acknowledges that he is anti-Semitic, that he is racist. He's talked about that. that he feels the man should have the final word, and that's his point of view on life. Can a judge, should a judge use that in making a decision on whether to strip him of custody?
But legally, they're very limited on if the way you're posing a hypothetical
Yeah.
there, it's not something that they're going to with any great moment be able to at least issue an order on, because you're going to have a situation where somebody is going to contest it on the basis of free speech, and then it's whether or not.
But doesn't the best interest of the child trump free speech in this situation?
Not necessarily. I think when you cast it in a different hypothetical, like you did when we started talking about that, then I can kind of see a judge saying, no, I'm going to stop it. To Phil's point, you hate for the government to have to insinuate themselves into this, but at a certain point, that may have to happen.
Phil, you get the last word.
Well, I've had husbands say, look, my wife is sleeping with 5 different guys right now, and we have 3 children. And so I'm going to the judge and saying, she's sleeping with everybody in the neighborhood. I want custody of my children. And the judge always says the same thing. Unless she's doing it in front of the children, that is not relevant to her fitness as a mother. And say, are you kidding me? She's behaving like a whore. She's out doing all this stuff. Well, unless she's doing it in front of the children, that doesn't matter. And people say, how can you say that? She's immoral. She's doing this. She's doing that. You have to get down to something that bears directly on the welfare of the children. And if this anti-Semitic conduct and beliefs is putting these children in the presence of those that are doing violence, and they're taking them to those kinds of meetings or something where the violence could break out, or they're involved in committing hate crimes or something like that, then it could meet a standard. But just a belief system, it's going to be difficult for a judge to use that as a peg to take someone's children away from them. As distasteful as that is, you've got to say they're putting the child in physical, mental, emotional harm's way. We would see that very clearly, but legally, I don't know that would meet the standard. Mark, what do you think?
I think you're spot on. I think you're absolutely spot on, which is why Harvey gave you the last word, and why we're going to bring you back very soon on a couple of subjects that I want to talk to you about.
By the way, Mark, I don't know if it was obvious to you, but when you kind of look at the two of us, Phil and me,
yes,
it's pretty clear who's older, right?
Yeah, I mean, come on.
Yeah,
he's a day.
Harvey,
Phil is 1 day older than me.
Wow.
Yeah,
he is 1 day older than me.
It's a good thing about being bald. You look the same all the time.
It's really true. It's absolutely true. You look the same as you did 20 years ago.
I'm going to say, you haven't aged at all, Phil. It's unbelievable.
Oh, gosh. Hey, Phil, we just love having you on. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks a lot, you guys. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this, because I think it's very instructive for people that, aren't celebrities, but are in these situations. And I hate to see children being pawns in custody situations, and parents using them as a rope in a tug of war. And as I say, I can't weigh in on Kanye or whatever, because I don't know him, but clearly this is a difficult situation, and I have confidence that Kim will find her way through this, because she's a thoughtful woman, and I hope she does the right thing here. And God bless these kids, because they seem to be doing well.
Yeah. They sure do. They sure seem to be. By the way, that song, I won't be the music critic, but it's a heck of a song that was dropped.
Oh, by the way, what I'm told is Diddy didn't know he was being recorded, and he's pissed off.
I think that's.
Oh, really?
I think that's accurate, but I won't go there. So I'll just leave it at
Of course you won't go
endorsing
there.
Kim. Endorsing Kim as a great parent and a tremendous human being.
Okay, guys,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
All right.
Phil, you're the best.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, Phil.
See you later.
Bye,
Thanks,
Harvey.
guys.
Take care, guys.
See you, Mark.